Hello everyone, and welcome to another Enshrouded build video. We are still busy building up our village. Today I'm going to be tackling the barn and the animal farm that goes alongside with it. First things first, we needed to do some landscaping. I removed trees, I removed a whole bunch of little hills, and I also added some more ground just to flesh out the area a little bit more, give myself a little bit more space to fit everything in. While I was doing this, I was already planning on what the layout sort of was going to look like. I knew also that I wanted to make sure that the farmer's house could be attached to the farm and the barn, or the animal farm part of it at least. So I really wanted to make sure I had a nice big working area. Once I had the area all flattened out and built up, and a little bit extended, I first placed down what I thought could be a good outline for the big area that I need. Keeping in mind that I'm not just having the barn up, I'm also creating a space for all the animals too. With the outline done, it was time to get to building. I knew I wanted quite a big area for the barn, so I could have multiple little animal bed spaces on the inside. But the one thing I was worried about, as is with all of the builds that I go through, was the ceiling. I didn't want it to be just straight triangles. I wanted it to have a little bit of shape. So I spent quite a lot of time trying to get it right. There was a few points where I miscalculated and had to take things down to redo them, but it was quite a learning experience. I used the single block after placing walls and slopes to try and give it some shape. And I also knew I wanted a supporting beam to go through the top. So that's basically where I started out. I did find, however, that for the little blocks that I had dug out, I had to put the rest of that ceiling or roof piece in one by one. And as much as it was doing kind of what I wanted it to do, it also wasn't. I decided to go with the black thatch for the top of the barn. I just felt that the granite that we used on the blacksmith's house would be a little bit too much. The thatch, although it's the black version of it, it looked really good and it gave the farm feeling, but still part of the village, if that makes any sense. While I was filling out the ceiling or the roof, I actually decided, hey, you know what, let's put a support beam in midway just to help with giving the roof a little bit of depth, a little bit of a shape, rather than just a straight slope up. I really was trying to avoid having just a straight triangle going up. It was also in this point where I realized the miscalculation. The beam needed to be way more than just 2 across. It actually ends up being 3, and later on, I think you'll see it, but it ends up being 4, just to keep everything even. Because lining up the ceiling on the left-hand side did not work out as well as it did the first time on the right-hand side. As you can see, both sides though, I needed to use that block by block by block method. I took the supporting beam through using conifer wood. Most of the barn is built with a mixture of conifer and pine. I really like the way that the two work together, especially for the barn look and feel. And then I used the castle wall block just to give it a little bit of depth and like stone features. I used it along the walls, on the inside, and for the floor. I went back up to the ceiling after messing around downstairs with that castle wall block, and again, I just have so much trouble with this part of building. I really need to figure out why I just can't get it right. Here's where I realized that I actually needed a supporting beam of 4 across instead of 3. Once I got this in though, everything actually started to fall into place. Went back down to start sorting out the gaps that I wanted to leave in the upstairs. I was considering putting window panels in, but it being a barn, you needed some way to get things up to the storage from the front. So I decided to leave the front open just like you would find on a normal barn, and just add a little bit of depth to it by using the pillars. I also used the conifer against the pine wood for those, and then started trimming out with the castle wall blocks again. I couldn't decide what I wanted to do with the inside pillars, so one side I did sort of like a cross, and the other side I did a full square. I looked at it and I decided, you know what, the square looks better, so I think I'll be continuing with those. But before I could get my brain into that mode, I knew I wanted to extend the roof just a little bit more so that I could have a decent amount of room for the animals. Also installed some half walls, not just for accent, but also to close off the rooms. I used half walls in the castle stone block to do the outsides, and then on the inside I used the conifer wood. And then I also needed to use the single block to actually carve out a little bit of the windows. I really wanted the roof to fit close next to the wood on the inside, so I ended up putting in single blocks across each of the edges before adding on the smaller version of the roof just to finish it off, so there was a little bit of a lip to keep the rain out. On the other side of the barn, I decided to extend it a little bit extra so that there was sort of a porch area, I guess you would call it, for the animals. Upstairs, on the back of the barn, I decided I wanted a little window so that if I wanted to have a look out over into the abyss, that's probably where I'd stand and do it. Outside on our porch area for the animals again, I decided, you know what? We should add a little bit of a roof there, or if it rains. So it was back to fighting with roof blocks. I'm really excited for the next update, where they have the first person view building. I think that is going to make a lot of this quite a bit easier. At least for people like me that have weird struggles counting. I knew I wanted the ceiling to cover the entirety of the porch for the rain, but I also knew that I didn't want it to just be a straight down slope. So I tried to level it out as much as possible, having little steps in between so that it wasn't just a straight angle. It had a little bit of depth and a little bit of build to it. I also played around quite a lot with single blocks, trying to find the right shape, and I decided what I would do is I'd have a couple of slopes and then have this section here where there's actually little holes in between supports, so a little bit of sunlight can still get through there into the barn. Once that ceiling was done, it was inside to start finishing off the trims around all the wood, and we're almost done. Now it was time to wall off each of the areas for the animals to sleep in. This is exactly what I was talking about, where I used the single block, cut out half of the wall. It was actually just a little bit over half of the wall, which is why I didn't use the half walls. I wasn't sure how much I wanted to actually cut out until I started, but I think I picked the right depth. I wanted to do as much as I could to give the inside of the barn its own depth, its own feeling of, hey, this was actually built and designed for something. Even though it's just a barn, I was sure that if I could do it right, it could still feel good to be inside and feel built for a reason. I also really try not to build flat, and I find little accents like this where you put stuff around the bottom helps it to stand out quite a lot more. If you guys have made it this far into the video, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my build. I have a whole village that I cannot wait for you guys to see. And to make sure that you don't miss any of it, be sure to hit that subscribe button and click like on the video. It helps immensely. With all the structures in place, it was time to start placing decorations. I started out with the lighting. I usually start with lighting and then move on to doing the rest of the inside. I did need to flatten out the front yard so that I could start putting in the fence. I definitely didn't want my animals falling off the edge, so I decided to use the refined wood block and fence off the edge of the mountain that I had created, or rather added onto. It was quite a long process because it wasn't all straight lines. I had to zigzag quite a bit around some of the rounder edges. It took me quite a while to build this fence in, but at the end of it, I was actually really happy with how it turned out. Using the refined wood gave me a little bit of a weathered feeling. So you could see that this part of the farm definitely been there a little bit for a little while. And the refined wood lets it have that weathered feeling, if that makes sense. I sped this part up here. I wanted to leave it in because I did want you to see as much of the process as possible when building this fence. Single block building is actually fun, for me at least. I really enjoy the freedom that it gives you. There are a few blocks that I find super helpful, especially the long one and the wall. But I find a strange satisfaction in getting to build these things block by block, especially at the end of the build. It also gives me a little bit more freedom to decide where I want something. Ended up going all the way around with the fence to the other side, and I realized that I wanted my farmer's house to be somewhere around here. But I also wanted to do something special with it. So I decided to fill in along the edges and basically prep the area for when I'm ready to build my farmer's house. I used the ground to sort of outline where things would be and leave myself markers to know where I'd be building. If you've figured out what I'm going to do with the farmers, leave a comment down below. Tell me what you think the idea is. Once I had created that space for myself for the farmer's home, it was back to putting up that fence. I didn't want it to be everything there was to the barn, so I closed it off just before the mouth of the barn's door, I guess. Then it was time to start placing and organizing rooms. I put down beds for yaks, goats, there are some rabbits, and there's also a dog and a cat. The upstairs was the storage area, so I started decorating that as if that's what it's used for. A little cart on the outside. I also decided to put in a big front door. I didn't want my animals to run out and get lost. There's a well, a watering hole, wheelbarrow, lighting, and finally, our animals. Don't worry, I made sure they're all fed. I'm really happy with the way that the barn and the animal farm area turned out. I think the animals are happy too. Lots of decorations and lots of little pieces went into it to make it feel like it has some life about it. With that done, time for the farmer's house. But that'll be the next video. I'll see you guys later.